What if your biggest dream was on the other side of your greatest fear? For one young man, that fear was speaking English, and the dream was Paris. To follow his incredible journey and discover the simple steps he took to succeed, make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. The story I have for you today is a very special one. It's about a young man who followed a dream that seemed almost impossible. It's a story about moving to Paris, learning English, and completely changing his life. Before we begin, I want to tell you something very important. If you have a dream, it doesn't matter how big or how small it is. Never, ever give up on it. I truly believe that you can do anything if you believe in yourself. This is the story of one person's journey, and I hope it inspires you to chase your own dreams. Let's go back to the beginning. Our story starts with a young man named Daniel. He was 25 years old, and he came from a small, quiet town. Ever since he was a child, Daniel had dreamed of seeing the world. He would look at pictures of big cities, famous landmarks, and different cultures, and he wanted to experience everything. But in his town, people didn't often talk about dreams like that. Life was simple. Most people stayed, found a job nearby, and lived a quiet life. Daniel, however, wanted something more. He felt a desire inside him to explore, to learn new things, and to build a special life for himself. One afternoon, he was watching a travel video about Paris. He saw the Eiffel Tower sparkling at night, the charming little streets with their old buildings, and the small, cozy cafes filled with people talking and laughing. The city looked so magical, so full of life and art. In that moment, something inside him just clicked. He knew with a certainty he had never felt before that he had to go to Paris. But there was a big problem. Daniel didn't speak English very well, and he knew no French at all. How could he survive in a city like Paris? When he told his parents about his dream, they were worried. They didn't understand at first. "Paris?" his mom said, her voice full of concern. "How will you get there? You don't even speak English well enough." "You're still learning," his dad added gently. "Why not just stay here? You could focus on your job." But Daniel didn't let their doubts stop him. He truly believed in himself. He continued to talk to them about his dream every day. He explained that he would learn English, he would work hard and save money, and that this was a new opportunity for his future. At first, they were still unsure. He could see the worry in their eyes, but he didn't stop talking about it. He wanted to show them how serious he was. One evening, he decided to do something to show them. He picked up his phone, found an English book, and started reading it out loud right there in the living room in front of them. He read slowly, repeating the new words and sentences. He was so nervous, his voice was shaking a little, but he didn't care. He wanted them to see his determination. Slowly, as they listened, his parents began to see that this wasn't just a passing idea. This was a real dream, and he was committed to it. That night he sat with them again. "I really want to go to Paris," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "This is my dream, and I promise I'll make it happen." To his surprise, his mom looked at him, and a small smile appeared on her face. "If this is your dream," she said softly, "then you should go for it." His dad nodded in agreement. For the very first time, Daniel felt that they truly believed in him. A huge weight lifted from his shoulders. He knew it wasn't going to be easy, but now he had their support. The next few months were very, very busy. Daniel applied to a university in Paris. He started working a part-time job to save every penny he could, and he practiced English every single day. He created a simple routine for himself, a routine that made a huge difference. In the morning, he practiced speaking. He would read books or news articles aloud, trying to make the words sound natural. In the afternoon, he focused on listening. He would listen to English podcasts or watch English movies, trying to improve his understanding of how people really spoke. And in the evening, he would practice writing. He wrote short stories in English, simple stories about his day or his dreams. There were many days when he made mistakes. Of course, sometimes he didn't know how to say something, and he felt embarrassed. But each time, he just kept going. He reminded himself that mistakes were a normal, necessary part of the journey. And slowly, day by day, he became more confident in his English skills. Finally, the big day arrived. He received an official letter in the mail. It was his acceptance letter from the university in Paris. He held it in his hands and couldn't believe it. It was really happening. He was going to Paris. The day he left for Paris was full of so many emotions. He felt excited, but he was also very nervous. His parents helped him pack his bags with love. His mom gave him a small empty notebook. "Write down everything you learn." She told him, "and everything you experience in Paris." At the airport, saying goodbye was hard. He felt a mix of sadness to be leaving and also so much happiness for the adventure ahead. He hugged his parents and made them a promise. "I'll make you proud," he said. The plane took off, and as he looked out of the window at his town getting smaller and smaller, he thought to himself, "This is it. My dream is finally coming true." When he arrived in Paris, everything felt new and exciting. The streets were buzzing with life. He could hear people speaking French all around him, a language that sounded like music. The buildings were old and beautiful, each one telling a story. But he quickly realized one very important thing: he had to use English to survive. From ordering food in a cafe to asking for directions on the street, he needed to speak English everywhere. The first time he tried to order a coffee, he was so nervous. He walked up to the counter, and his words came out very slowly. He even made a mistake in his sentence. But the cashier just smiled kindly and said, "No problem. Take your time." Daniel felt a wave of relief. That night, as he sat by the window of his small apartment, he looked out at the distant, sparkling lights of the Eiffel Tower. He couldn't believe how far he had come. He had made it to Paris. But he also knew that the real challenge was just beginning. On his second day in Paris, the sun was shining brightly through his window, casting a warm glow across the room. He could hear the sounds of the city waking up outside, the soft murmur of people talking, cars passing by, and the occasional beep of a horn. It still felt like a dream, but at the same time, everything was so real. He had finally made it to Paris. Now he had to face his biggest challenge: becoming comfortable with English. Sure, he had learned some words and phrases back home, but here in the heart of the city, he had to use English every single day. The pressure was on. He had no choice but to dive in. He had to speak English to buy groceries, to ask for directions, and to communicate with everyone around him. It was scary at first. He had so many questions in his mind. What if I make a mistake? What if they can't understand me? But he knew he couldn't run away from this fear. If he wanted to succeed, he had to push through it. His first task was simple. He needed to buy food. This wasn't just about eating. It was about learning to survive in his new home. So he decided to go to the local market. He took out the little notebook his mother had given him and made a list translating every word from his native language into English. Apples, bread, milk, cheese. He kept the list simple. He walked into the store, his heart beating a little faster than usual. The moment he stepped inside, he felt a little lost. There were so many people, and everyone seemed to be moving with such purpose. He took a deep breath and walked toward the fruits and vegetables. "Okay," he whispered to himself. "You can do this." He picked up an apple and looked for someone who worked there. "Excuse me?" he said, trying to sound confident. A shopkeeper turned to him. "How much is this apple?" She looked at him for a second, a little confused. He realized he had spoken too quietly, so he tried again a little louder. "How much is this apple?" A smile appeared on her face, and she replied in slow, clear English, €1. He couldn't believe it. He had just successfully used English to ask a question and get an answer. It was such a small thing, but in that moment, it felt like a huge victory. He continued through the store, repeating the same process for everything on his list. And with each item, he felt a little more confident. By the time he was ready to pay, he was feeling much better. He even managed to ask for a bag in English, and the cashier replied with a friendly smile. That small success gave him the courage he needed. You know, that moment in the market was so important for Daniel. He was facing a fear that many of us have, the fear of making a mistake when speaking a new language. He chose to be brave instead of staying home. I have a question for you all. Can you remember a time when you had to do something that scared you? What was it, and how did you find the courage to do it? I would love to read about your experiences in the comments below. The next day, feeling a little braver, Daniel decided to enroll in an English language class. He found a language school not far from his apartment. He walked in, hoping they would accept him. The school had a very friendly atmosphere, and he could hear people speaking English with all kinds of different accents. He signed up for a beginner's class, ready to get serious about his learning. The first day of class was a bit overwhelming. There were people from all over the world, from Spain, Japan, Brazil, and even Russia. They had all come to Paris for different reasons, but one thing brought them together: their shared desire to learn English. The teacher, Miss Sarah, was kind and very patient. She started with simple words and phrases explaining everything clearly. At first, Daniel felt like he was the slowest student in the class. Some of the others were already more fluent than him. They spoke with confidence, and he couldn't help but compare himself to them. But Miss Sarah noticed this. She saw the worry on his face and came to talk to him after class. "Don't worry, Daniel," she said with a warm smile. "Everyone learns at their own pace. Just keep practicing, and you'll get better." Her words made him feel so much better. He knew she was right. He had to stop comparing himself to others and just focus on his own progress. So he began taking careful notes, paying extra attention to pronunciation, and practicing everything he learned after class. On his way home, he would listen to English podcasts repeating the words and sentences he had learned that day. It was hard work, but he was determined. As the weeks went by, he started to make new friends in his class. One of them, a friendly woman named Maria from Brazil, became his study partner. She had been learning English for a little while longer than him, and they spent hours after class practicing together. Sometimes they would meet at a small cafe near the school. They would sit with their notebooks and coffee cups, writing down new words and helping each other with grammar. They would often laugh at their own mistakes, but they never stopped trying. Maria taught him a very important lesson. "Mistakes are not something to be afraid of," she would say with a smile. "Every mistake is a step forward." And slowly, Daniel started to believe her. He wasn't perfect, but he learned that every time he made a mistake, he also learned something new. Outside of class, he made an effort to use English in every situation he could. He practiced ordering food in English at restaurants. He would ask for help on the streets, even if it was just for directions. He started talking to people in the parks. Sometimes the local people didn't understand him completely, but they were almost always patient, and their kindness made him feel more comfortable. One afternoon, he went to a cafe to read a book in English. He ordered a coffee and sat by the window, watching the people of Paris walk by. A woman sat down at the table next to him and smiled. He saw that she was also reading a book in English, and he noticed it was the same book he was reading. He felt a rush of nervousness, but he decided to be brave. "Excuse me," he said. "I'm reading the same book. How are you liking it?" To his surprise, she answered in perfect English. "Oh, it's wonderful. What part are you on?" They began talking about the book, and soon they were talking about all sorts of things about Paris travel language and life. This was the first time Daniel had a real flowing conversation in English with a stranger, and it felt amazing. They exchanged phone numbers and promised to meet again. That conversation was a turning point for him. He realized that English wasn't just a subject he was learning in school anymore. It was becoming a part of his life. Months passed, and his English improved every single day. He could see the progress he was making. He could speak to people without feeling so nervous, and he could understand almost everything he heard or read. But he had gained something even more valuable than language skills. He had gained confidence. He was no longer afraid to speak up. He had learned that mistakes were not something to be ashamed of. They were just part of the process. With each mistake, he grew stronger, and with every small victory, he felt closer to his dream. One day, he stood on the small balcony of his apartment, looking at the Eiffel Tower in the distance. It had been almost a year since he first arrived in Paris. He had done it. He had learned English. He had built a new life for himself. He realized it wasn't just about the language. It was about having the courage to follow his dreams, the patience to keep going when things were hard, and the belief that he could do it even when it seemed impossible. Paris had become his home, and English had become his bridge to the world. The sun was beginning to set over Paris, casting a beautiful golden light across the city. Daniel sat by his window looking at the familiar shape of the Eiffel Tower. It had been a year since he arrived in this city, and in that time he had faced so many challenges. He had left behind everything he knew, stepped into the unknown, and learned a new language from scratch. But now everything felt different. The fear that once held him back had slowly disappeared. He could speak English confidently, and he was no longer just a visitor in Paris. It truly felt like home. One evening, he received a call from a good friend back home. His name was Ahmed, and they had been friends for years. Ahmed knew how much Daniel had struggled with English, and he had always been supportive. "Daniel, how's Paris? How's your English?" he asked excitedly. Daniel smiled. "It's amazing, Ahmed," he replied. "I can speak English without feeling nervous now. I can understand movies, I can talk to people, and I even dream in English sometimes." Ahmed laughed on the other end of the line. "That's incredible. You've come so far." His friend's words made Daniel feel incredibly proud. He had worked so hard to get to this point. It wasn't easy. There were many times when he had wanted to give up, when he felt overwhelmed, and when the progress seemed so slow. But now he knew he had made it. The next day, something unexpected happened. He had been asked to speak at an event for new students at his language school. The director of the school, Miss Sarah, had invited him personally because she had seen how much he had improved. She wanted him to share his story and inspire others who were just starting their own English journeys. At first, he was scared. "How can I speak in front of a group of people?" he thought. "Especially when I'm still learning myself. What if I make a mistake?" But then he remembered everything he had been through. He remembered how he started so nervous and unsure. He remembered the first time he tried to speak to someone in English and how proud he felt when they understood him. He realized that this was a perfect moment to share his journey and to show others that they could do it too. On the day of the event, he stood in front of the crowd. His heart was racing, and he could feel butterflies in his stomach. But he took a deep breath and began to speak. "Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel, and I want to share my story with you." His voice was steady. A year ago, I didn't know much English. I was scared, nervous, and unsure of myself. But I decided to take a step to move to Paris and to learn. It wasn't easy. There were times when I wanted to give up. But I didn't. I kept practicing even when it was hard. And now here I am. The crowd was silent, listening intently to his every word. He continued telling them about his first grocery shopping experience, the challenges he faced in school, and how he had learned to embrace his mistakes. He shared the importance of taking small steps every single day, even when the progress doesn't seem obvious. He told them about the moment when he realized that English wasn't just a language, it was a tool that opened doors to the world. As he spoke, he could feel a shift inside himself. He wasn't just telling a story anymore. He was living it again. He was no longer the person who was afraid to speak or who doubted his own abilities. He was someone who had fought for his dreams and had won. The students in the audience were nodding. Some of them were smiling, and others were even taking notes. After he finished speaking, there was a long pause. And then the applause started. It wasn't just polite clapping. It was real, warm appreciation. He felt a rush of emotion. It was like the whole room was celebrating his journey with him. As he walked out of the event, Miss Sarah came over to him. "You did a wonderful job, Daniel," she said, her eyes shining with pride. "I'm so proud of you." "Thank you," he said, feeling so grateful. "I couldn't have done it without all the help I've received." "Keep going," she said with a smile. "You have so much potential. I can see you doing great things." Her words stuck with him. He had spent so much time focusing on the language, on getting every word right. But now he realized that learning English was just the beginning. It was the bridge to something much bigger. It was the key to all his other dreams, to his entire future. And as Daniel realized, his journey was really just starting. I want to encourage you to continue on your own journey with us. If you want to hear more stories like Daniel's stories of courage learning and new beginnings, make sure you subscribe to our channel. That way, you won't miss the next part of the adventure. After that event, Daniel decided to take a new step. He wanted to work with people who were struggling with English to help them just like he had been helped. He started volunteering at a local community center, teaching English to new immigrants. It felt incredible to give back. He could see the same nervousness in their eyes that he once had. But he knew deep down that they could do it too. They just needed to believe in themselves. Every day, he practiced speaking English with his students, helping them build their confidence just like he had built his. They would make mistakes, and he would smile and tell them, "It's okay. Mistakes are how we learn. Keep going." Over time, his life in Paris became everything he had dreamed of, and even more. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was thriving. He could communicate with anyone, he could travel anywhere, and he had built meaningful relationships with people from all over the world. He learned that the real victory was not in speaking perfect English or never making a mistake. The real victory was in overcoming his fears, pushing through the tough times, and never ever giving up. The real victory was learning that no matter how hard the journey, the most important thing was to just keep moving forward. He had learned English, but more importantly, he had learned to believe in himself. One afternoon, as he was walking down the beautiful streets of Paris, he thought back to his first days here. He remembered how scared he had been, how uncertain of his future. But now he was walking with his head held high, smiling at the people he passed and feeling proud of everything he had accomplished. He knew that this was just the beginning. He had new dreams now. Dreams that reached beyond Paris, beyond just learning English. He wanted to travel the world to speak to people from every corner of the earth and to continue to grow. And most importantly, he wanted to share his story with others so they could see that anything is possible if they are willing to put in the work to face their fears and to never give up. And that's where our story of Daniel concludes for today. What a journey of courage and perseverance. I am so curious to hear what you think about it all. What were your final thoughts on his story? Do you have any lingering questions about why a character did what they did or how they felt? Please leave all of your opinions, theories, and questions in the comments below. I truly love reading them and building this wonderful conversation with all of you. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in our next story.